I'm Caitlin Phillips, and in this episode of The Side Comment, authors Jack Farchy and Javier Blas illuminate the shadowy world of commodities traders, revealing how this largely unknown group of people exercise significant influence.
I'm Jack Farchy.
And I'm Javier Blas.
And we're the authors of The World for Sale, a book about the traders who dominate the world's supply of oil, food, and metals. These commodity traders play a very important role in the global economy. The four largest traders sell $725 billion of natural resources every year. That's more than the annual exports of Japan. The largest oil traders handle about a quarter of the global oil market. The agriculture traders handle half of the global food markets, and two traders dominate the markets for metals. Their role as traders and suppliers of the strategic resources that make the world run makes them very important players. Without them, petrol stations would run out of fuel, factories would grind to a halt, and bakeries would run short of flour.
Despite the importance of the commodity traders for the global economy, nobody knows much about them. Their names are largely unknown outside the industry, and certainly they lack a brand recognition as companies like ExxonMobil, Coca-Cola, or Apple do. The largest traders are names like Cargill, which is a king in agricultural commodities, or Glencore, which is the largest trader of metal, or Vitol, British company that dominates in oil trading. Those companies fly largely under the radar despite their importance to the global economy. And it has been so for a long time. When the commodity trading in the modern world started after the Second World War, the big names of the industry were companies like Philip Brothers, which also were largely unknown to the general public. Today, the companies remain secretive, and that has been an interest for us because for a long time we have thought that their importance in the global economy was not really reaching any name recognition, and that the commodity traders needed to be better known by the general public and certainly by regulators and politicians.
And one of the reasons we've long thought that commodity traders needed to be better understood is that they play a very important role, not just in the global economy and markets, but also in politics. So to take one example that we write about in the book, during the civil war in Libya in 2011, at a moment when Libyan rebels were rising up against the dictatorship of Colonel Gaddafi, who was it who flew into Libya and changed the direction of the war but a commodity trader? In fact, it was a man called Ian Taylor, a very suave and charming British trader who flew in early 2011 at the time when the country was in the midst of a civil war and struck a deal with Libya's rebels to supply them with fuel. He did this without any guarantee of payment. He'd only be paid if the rebels won the war. In the end, his company Vitol, the world's largest oil trader, supplied $1 billion worth of fuel to the Libyan rebels, and without a shadow of a doubt, changed the direction of the war. And that's how commodity traders can play a very important role and have done throughout history. We talk about lots of other examples in the book.
Indeed, another example was Cuba, where the commodity traders play a big role in supporting the regime of Fidel Castro by buying the sugar that the island was producing and supplying Cuba with the oil that it was much needed there. Or in the Soviet Union, where after the collapse of the communist regime, the commodity traders were picking sides and helping some of the businessmen that later became the oligarchs and today play a big role both in business and politics in Russia. In places like Democratic Republic of Congo, where they bankroll governments. And in many other circumstances where even at war, the commodity traders have been financing governments or factions on those wars. We saw some commodity traders like Glencore supporting the government in Tajikistan during a bloody civil war in the 1990s, or in Angola, where Mark Rich, which was one of the pioneers of the oil trade, supported one of the sides of the civil war in the country by buying crude oil on credit.
The commodity trade is also known for its history of wrongdoing. Probably most famously, Mark Rich, one of the earliest famous commodity traders who was credited with pioneering the trade of oil, admitted to paying bribes to government officials in order to get some of the oil deals that made him his billions of dollars. But the tarnish of corruption and wrongdoing has continued to dog the industry. And in the course of our reporting for the book, we had some fairly striking conversations with current and former commodity traders who spoke about some of the business practices that they've been involved in. One trader, a former senior trader at Glencore, the company that Mark Rich founded, is now called Glencore, told us how he'd flown around the world with a suitcase full of cash in order to pay commissions. And indeed, many of the largest commodity traders today are under investigation from authorities in the US, the UK, Switzerland, Brazil, over allegations of corruption. So there's an issue that the industry faces, and things are beginning to change, but the cloud of wrongdoing and the perception of wrongdoing continues to dog the industry.
Even as we were researching the book, one of the big commodity traders, Vitol, which is the largest in oil, admitted that until the middle of 2020, one of his executives was paying bribes in Latin America to obtain oil contracts. There's a sense of how long the wrongdoing in some cases have continued, and is that the mix of natural resources and power and money leaves quite a lot of room for potential buccaneering by the commodity traders. The risk for the traders is not just these corruption investigations that some of them are facing, but more profound changes that they are ongoing on global markets and the global economy that may affect their businesses. The first one is the fact that information today is more democratic than it was many years ago. The commodity traders always benefited from having a superior knowledge of the markets that they were operating. There were times, perhaps 50 years ago, that a metals commodity trader could go to places like Peru or Mongolia and buy copper at the price of a week earlier because they knew what was the price at that moment, and others with less access to communications didn't have. Today, everyone knows the price of every commodity at the very same time. And today, most people involved in the market have the same kind of supply demand forecasts that are available for the more sophisticated traders. That is reducing the advantage that the commodity traders have to make money. Another problem for the traders is climate change. A lot of their business centers around moving fossil fuels like crude oil, coal, or natural gas. And as countries step up the fight to climate change, probably we are going to see the trade of those commodities being reduced. On the other hand, there are going to be other commodities that are going to be potentially more in demand, like lithium or cobalt for batteries for electric vehicles. That's a significant opportunity for the traders going forward. The other significant challenge that the traders face is within themselves, within their ranks. Most of those companies are still dominated by men on their executive committees and have been very slow in adopting to the new century. Some traders are beginning now to promote women among their top rankings. But as we saw when we were reporting the book and we were interviewing many of the top executives, we were struggling to see in the executives committee any woman.
All that said, the commodity traders remain enormously powerful and profitable companies. If you need any example of that, just look at 2020, the year when the coronavirus pandemic struck. Oil prices collapsed as Saudi Arabia and Russia launched a price war on one another in the midst of a collapse in demand as people were forced to stay at home and planes were grounded. In fact, the price of one key benchmark, oil in the US, fell below zero for the first time ever. And yet for the commodity traders, this was a magnificent opportunity for profit. They bought oil at extremely low prices, even some of them negative prices, meaning that the people who were selling them the oil had to pay them to take it off their hands. And then a few months later, as demand recovered, they sold it for a huge profit. That encompasses exactly why commodity traders are an unavoidable and crucial part of the way our modern world works, and also how much power they have. Without them, much of the world's oil industry may well not have survived the year of 2020. And that's why we think they're quite fascinating. If you're interested to learn more about the commodity traders and the role that they played in our modern world, The World for Sale is available now at all bookshops that are open and selling books.